Hi, it's Dwyer. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. It is March the 17th, 2024. Let's talk about William Zepeda. Let's talk about Shakur Stevenson. Let's talk about 135. Let's talk about 140. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now let's open with something I believe in that many might not. Right? Some fighters get to pick their weight class. They understand. Nobody at a certain weight class has their hand speed. Even if they're a little bit smaller than some of the other fighters, they understand that their attributes give them the edge. Right now, it's an open secret in boxing, but the fighter himself has told you, and that fighter is Dmitry Bivol, that if needed, he can drop down to 168 and fight. In other words, he's not at 175 out of necessity. Rather, he's at 175 because he understands he has a foot speed and a hand speed advantage. And understand, Bivol is blessed defensively. Doesn't look to me like anyone else at 175 is. So he's found a home. As I make this video, Bivol, of course, is an unbeaten fighter. Bivol, to me, is on his way to the Hall of Fame. Some fighters don't even know they're in the wrong weight class. Right? The people around them haven't really fully explained to them that if they changed weight class, they might actually be more effective. Folks, we've seen Alexander Usyk fight now several times at heavyweight. Are you sure that any of the guys he has fought at heavyweight, we're not going to name them, I don't want to embarrass anyone, but are you sure that any of the guys Usyk has fought at heavyweight would give him the battle that Jai Opetaia would give him? Right, folks? Opetaia, younger guy, younger than today's heavyweights, right? Today's heavyweights really are dominated by 30-somethings. Right? Opetaia is simply too fast, too young, moves too well for most of the guys in the heavyweight division. Right? Understand, in an earlier generation, Michael Spinks, folks, we didn't have the cruiserweight division. He jumped from light heavy. Michael Spinks showed up at heavyweight. Not only takes down the legend, then unbeaten Larry Holmes, but then Spinks decides to fight Jerry Cooney. Please look at that fight. Cooney looks like he has no defense whatsoever in that fight. Spinks opens up. Spinks disposes of him. You understood that Michael Spinks at heavyweight was dominant. Spinks' problem at heavyweight can be summed up in two words: Mike Tyson. Right? Well, let me just say this. You just saw William Zepeda destroy Maxi Hughes. Understand, Zepeda is a southpaw. He's 5'9". He's front foot heavy. He is relentless. He's comfortable going to your body. Right, folks? Zepeda right now is declaring war on the 135-pound weight class. Now, there's a guy at 135 who several esteemed people in boxing, among them Paulie Malignaggi, among them Tim Bradley, believe is on the verge of being the best in the sport pound for pound. And that's Shakur Stevenson. Right now, my advice to Stevenson is to remember the boos, and there were a lot of them. Remember the boos that he heard in the De Los Santos fight, right? He needs to realize that he has a certain style. It's a back foot-centric style. He can fight on his front foot, but Stevenson isn't viewed as a big puncher, right? Stevenson is really boxing, hand speed, accuracy. He's not Gervonta Davis. With Stevenson, you could show up late for a fight and say, it's okay, I missed the first 3 rounds. It's Shakur Stevenson. You can't do that with Gervonta Davis. Now understand, I myself am impressed by Stevenson. I believe, and I've said so here online, Stevenson beats Loma. Right? And Loma, big name at 135. Let's remember, Loma gives Devin Haney all he can handle. Loses a close fight, according to most of the public. Then Haney leaves for 140. Haney's still unbeaten. That Loma fight is really the biggest test Devin Haney has had in his professional boxing career. Well, I believe that the public, for whatever reason, and I don't think you should fight the tape, the public, for whatever reason, does not like Stevenson at 135. Right? They see him, he's on his back foot. We're not cheering him like we would cheer an Ali or a Pernell Whitaker. Right? Some slick defensive fighter who can go on his back foot, make you miss. We're not cheering him because we view him as a Goliath. Right? No one roots for Goliath. He's the headliner. When we see a headliner backing away from a lesser-known De Los Santos, who was a southpaw, by the way, like Zepeda, we start to boo. We say, hey, why is this favorite backing away from this lesser-known fighter? Now, I believe Stevenson, if he were to go to 140, if he were to fight people like Matthias, right, the big left hook guy, if he were to fight Devin Haney, understand, Haney's figured it out. Who has challenged Haney at 140? Right, Haney dominated Regis Prograis. I thought Prograis would do a lot better. He did not. Now Haney has Ryan Garcia lined up for big money. Ask yourself, in which division was Haney more successful? 135, where it's blood and guts in that 12th round against Loma? Or 140, where the fight's over against Prograis, heading into the later rounds, where there's a knockdown in the fight? Haney gets the knockdown. Now, I believe Shakur Stevenson, if he goes to 140, right, would find the waters much calmer for him. He would have a decided hand speed advantage. Understand, too, one of the big stars at 140, Teofimo Lopez. We know the blueprint on how to beat him. It's the Sandor Martin blueprint. If you're a southpaw and you can stay outside, you're going to give him problems because he's not a lead puncher. He's not Mike Tyson. He's not going to try to come find you. He's really more of a counter puncher. Right? Josh Taylor might not have realized it, but Josh Taylor played into Teofimo Lopez's hands by being aggressive. Had Josh Taylor a southpaw, been more back foot oriented, had he talked to Sandor Martin before his fight against Teofimo, he would realize that southpaws want Teofimo to come to them. Shakur Stevenson would be a boogeyman for Teofimo Lopez. And I consider Teofimo to be one of the best in the pocket. Not only that, the public perception would change. Shakur Stevenson, rather than being viewed as Goliath, rather than have fans show up and expect some Michael Jordan performance, if he jumps up to 140, many people are going to view him as the underdog. I'm guessing if he were to sign to fight Teofimo Lopez right now, and that fight would be for big money, I'm guessing Lopez would be the favorite, in part because Lopez has beaten people like Josh Taylor. Right? Let me just say, Stevenson, for all the hand speed, all the accuracy, all the greatness, would have a problem with William Zepeda. Right, folks? Zepeda, on his front foot, a southpaw, would go looking for Stevenson even more aggressively than De Los Santos. De Los Santos was looking for that one big punch. Zepeda is a guy who will chop down a tree methodically. He's not trying to knock the tree over with one axe shot. No, he is trying to chop the tree down. Let's also say this too. I know some people are going to say, well, it's southpaw against southpaw, so no one is going to be out of sorts. Right, folks? Everyone's going to be out of sorts because southpaws are actually accustomed to fighting righties. Right? Understand, everyone is uncomfortable fighting a southpaw, including southpaws. The thing with Zepeda, too, is Zepeda is a guy who is going to go to your body. Right? He's going to be on his front foot. Shakur Stevenson's going to be backing up. If I'm Shakur Stevenson, I ask myself, after the De Los Santos fight where people are booing and stuff like that, one judge, by the way, had that fight 115-113. If I'm Stevenson, do I want to be in that position again at 135 pounds? Right? If you move up, understand you're no longer in that position. As dominant as we feel Jai Opetaia is at cruiser, right? You don't have to believe me. There's a betting spread out there for him against Maris Briedis, a guy who, in my eyes, today, gave Alexander Usyk the toughest fight of his career. And I don't understand the betting spread. I don't understand the deference that Jai Opetaia is getting, and that's in a rematch where Opetaia won the first fight. Right? Well, all I'm saying is understand, you can be Jai Opetaia, viewed as a Goliath in your weight class. And if it were announced tomorrow that Opetaia was fighting Daniel Dubois, a winnable fight, right? Just understand, there's a chance Dubois would be favored in that fight. We would view the fight differently. We wouldn't expect a Michael Jordan performance, an impossible performance from Jai Opetaia. Well, Shakur Stevenson needs to think about the expectations here. His promoter fully believes in him. Oscar De La Hoya, Zepeda's promoter, was on X and sent out playful tweets saying, hey, Shakur Stevenson, contact William Zepeda. Bob Arum, Shakur Stevenson's promoter, responded by saying, hey, we're a phone call away. Right? The promoters want that fight to happen. If I'm the fighter, I ask myself, didn't Devin Haney look like he had it easy against Regis Prograis at 140? What am I doing here at 135 where I'm not the box office king? Folks, that's Gervonta Davis. Right? Where there are very tough guys that the public doesn't fully appreciate. Right? Frank Martin is a very tough opponent for anybody at 135. William Zepeda, if you don't know the name, you need to know the name. He's an unbeaten fighter. He's at 135. Right? This is the tough roller coaster in the amusement park. If I'm Shakur Stevenson, I'm thinking to myself, well, I was a champ already at 130. I'm a champ at 135. Why don't I now jump to 140 where, I could fight Regis Prograis. I could fight Teofimo Lopez. I could fight Subriel Matias. I should be able to hold my own. Not only that, if I get hit with a big punch, I have an excuse. I was taking on all comers. I was fighting bigger fighters. Right? So let me just say this. If a Shakur Stevenson, William Zepeda fight is announced, right, just understand that the Rocky story in that fight is the Zepeda side of the play, not the Stevenson side of the play. Right? Zepeda probably will go off at a plus 150 or higher. Right? Stevenson has to realize that he has the problem Wilt Chamberlain had in basketball, where people were rooting for Bill Russell more than Chamberlain. Understand, Russell, who was a good friend of Chamberlain, Russell believes Chamberlain was the best to ever play the game, but not the fans of the 1960s. Right? Wilt was always popular with women. Let's just call it what it was, right? Wilt was popular with women, but the guys didn't like Wilt. Right? Knick fans want you to believe that, Wilt folded up against Willis Reed, Clyde, Earl the Pearl back in the day. Right? There's that story, of course, that Wilt takes himself out of the last game played in the 60s, right? The championship game with Russell's last game, and then wanted to come back in. And the Laker coach refused to let Chamberlain back in the game. Now, all I can say is popularity is fleeting. You can be the best and still not be loved. Right? Larry Holmes, let me just tell you, one of the best I've ever seen. I'd love to see Larry Holmes against, name the heavyweight today. Fury, Usyk, Joshua, bring him. I'd love to see Larry against this group of heavyweights. I'm just telling you, because Larry came after Ali. Because Ali was a talker who talked about current events. Because we all sensed that as Ali was being mean to opponents before fights, the real Ali, after the Thriller in Manila, calls over Marvis Frazier. And in the ring tells Marvis Frazier, look, I know I said a lot of things about your dad. Just understand, I have the utmost respect for him. He's a great fighter, basically. Right? Because we understood Ali as a man, Larry Holmes was never loved. We never got that understanding with Larry. Right? There's some great champs right now who are not loved. Shakur Stevenson needs to realize that he might be one of them. So just one man's opinion. If I'm Shakur, I take out a film of my fight against De Los Santos. Listen to the crowd. How many people in that crowd knew who De Los Santos was? Listen to the crowd. They're booing. They're booing Stevenson's back foot. Right? Jermaine Ortiz got treated better by the crowd than Shakur Stevenson did against De Los Santos, right? Ortiz against Teofimo Lopez. So if I'm Stevenson, I think, okay, look, there's a lot of money at 140. Why don't I chase Devin Haney? I understand Devin Haney's father has said Stevenson brings nothing to the table. Folks, every generation has heard that. You know the way to chase a guy, right? He's fighting, you're in the front row. After the fight, you're in the ring. The other guy holds a press conference for another fight. And of course, you're at the press conference. I mean, understand. You know, there are ways that Stevenson can be a thorn in the side of the powers that be, not just Devin Haney, but Teofimo Lopez. Maybe that's the call that needs to be made to Bob Arum. Right, by the way, Bob is the promoter for both Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez. Right, there are fights that can be made. I'm just not sure if fighting Zepeda at 135, and that's a competitive fight. I believe Zepeda is the betting side of the play because you're going to get better than even money odds. And Stevenson has already shown that he has a problem with aggressive front foot heavy punching southpaws. Right? Stevenson's issue might be the opposite of Teofimo Lopez's issue. Lopez has a problem with back foot southpaws who can move away from him. Right? Sander Martin, Jermaine Ortiz. Right? By contrast, Stevenson, one man's opinion. I understand everyone's going to disagree with me, and that's good. Stevenson's problem are on guys who are going to come toward him, like De Los Santos. Understand, he was so thrown by De Los Santos that Stevenson was leaping out of the pocket the minute De Los Santos even hinted at entering the pocket. Right? He can't do that against William Zepeda and expect the crowd to be on his side. While he won 2 judges' cards by 4 rounds against De Los Santos, I would question both of those cards. I thought the 115-113 card was more accurate. In other words, he does not have a big margin of error against William Zepeda. Anyway, that's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this YouTube video. Let me also say, too, you have other people, Rolly Romero, who to me looks beatable. Maybe Isaac Cruz takes care of him. But there are other fights out there that, to me, Stevenson would have an easier time in, rather than William Zepeda. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this YouTube video. Let me just close, too, by just saying, the line, and I know the fight's in Australia, but the line for that Maris Briedis fight against Opetaia is simply ridiculous. Right? I know Opetaia is extremely promising. Right? I need for people to understand that Maris Briedis himself is fighting out of division. Just look at his fight against heavyweight Manuel Charl, who now calls himself Mahmoud Charl. Right, folks? I believe that you need to go by pricing. Anytime you're anywhere and they tell you, hey, Maris Briedis is getting better than 3-to-1 odds, you've got to say, okay, I'll be right back. You need to hop up and you need to place a bet. And as you're placing the bet, then you can ask the question, who's he fighting? Right? I'm just telling you, Briedis, to date, gave Usyk his toughest fight as a pro. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Opetaia had a broken jaw at the end of the first fight. Those are my thoughts. I look forward to yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.